is not working.
Right. So yeah, let's go ahead. All right, welcome to the Q&A. We're going to wait a few more minutes until we can get make sure all the participants are in. So we'll just hold on a few minutes and then we'll get started. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started today. Welcome back to our Q&A for this week based on our dialogue from last week. We have with us again today Dr. Brian Yontz from the Education Department and Dr. Julius Bailey from Philosophy, and we're super excited for them to start answering your questions. So feel free to start posing questions and we will work through those for the next 45 to 50 minutes. So, could you talk to us about what are good habits for someone to become highly educated?
Well, I think when we understand the relationship between sort of cognition, how do I bring things into my consciousness, and relationships between that and people, I think is a good, important way to start. I think one of the habits that will help us to process information while at the same time engage with one another has a lot to do with empathy. I mean, I think education has a lot to do with empathy. How much do I want to understand each other? How much do I want to understand other ideas and viewpoints? In what ways do I want to see myself grow and see others grow? So I think empathy is one. I think I like to call improvisation sort of jazz-like qualities, right? The ability to not be regimented in sort of one way of thinking, right? So when Professor Yontz and I were talking about the fact that many of you come from various aspects of the state, some aspects of the country, maybe even some of you out of the country, you have to understand that some of you have been brought up differently, right? So how you become educated has a lot to do with exposure and your willingness to expose yourself to more things and more people and more ideas allows that education sort of bubble to just get wider and wider. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things we can talk about: persistence and obviously issues of honesty and integrity. But certainly, I think being jazz-like and improvisational in terms of our ability to learn more and being empathetic to others, I think would be two ways to, begin that process.
Great, thank you. What is the best way to get educated while at Wittenberg? How did you guys unmask yourselves?
So, I think that, Julius is exactly right. I think it's exposure to, individuals, organizations, people groups that might be different than where you're coming from. I still remember one of my first years here, I had a first year student that was on the football team. And at that time, Wittenberg had a Chinese dragon dance team that he chose to engage in. And after reflecting during that first year, he said that he did things that he never thought he would do when coming to college, and was certainly kind of outside his background. And I think that engaging in those types of activities, particularly with groups of individuals or student organizations that are different, is one way to kind of expand that understanding that to become more highly educated.
And if you remember what I said last week about creating teams, right? I mean, being able to find that network, being able to find that team, beginning obviously with your FYS, hopefully you'll be able to begin and create a relationship with your lead teacher, with your co-fac and your peer mentor, right? Those are the ways to begin the unmasking processes, because even as you'll find out next week, right, we'll start, those of us who teach FYS, will start advising with you, right? And a lot of that process, yes, it's academic, but it's also, hey, how is your adjustments going? What are some things you want to engage in? And this is where you begin to that unmasking process. Look, Doc, I'm not doing too well. This COVID-19 is driving me nuts, right? I don't have a wide enough friend circle. I need to engage a little bit more. How do I do that? The organizations I thought I was going to join, they haven't started meeting yet because of all these COVID rules, right? So all this stuff is where you begin to talk to us and create a team around you, because then you can use us in that process of unmasking.
So this is a little down the same path, but how does being vulnerable help us engage with knowledge?
Yeah, I think that's an extremely important question at this point in our nation's history, or in where we are in the world. This idea of being open to new knowledge. Those that are in psychology are thinking about cognitive aspects. They kind of talk about accommodating and assimilating new knowledge and understanding. I think that what we're seeing today is we're crying for the opportunity to be understood and to hopefully understand others. And being vulnerable and being teachable, being a student in not just an academic sense here on this campus, but being a student of life, I think is incredibly important for progress and for a progressive society where we can begin to do better and do better for each other, do better for the environment, do better for marginalized groups, do better for policy. And I think that is an incredibly important characteristic that I hope our students actually leave with, going out into this world where they can kind of drop that mask, continue to be teachable and vulnerable in some ways.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I just want to pick up just gently with Professor Yontz said here, because vulnerability has a lot to do with humbleness, right? But that's so antithetical sometimes, right, Professor Yontz, to what the American ethos is, right? We always want to act like we got the answers, right? We're the greatest country in the world. We're the best at this. We're the best at that. And as Professor Yontz mentioned, we're watching our country slip away every single day and every single month, partly because we as a nation are afraid to just say, I don't know. Yeah. Let me learn. Let me hear from you. Let me hear from you. Let me hear from you. And I think some of us slip into that too, right? My daughter, she just told me the other day, Daddy, you don't know everything. And I said, sure I do. You know what I'm saying? But then she just said, no, Daddy, you don't. And I said, you're right. I don't. And I think that if you understand those of you in my class, you're reading Socrates right now. He says the best of what makes us wise is the recognition that we don't know. And so this process of searching for knowledge, not acting like I got all the answers. What did Kanye tell the guy on Sway? You don't have all the answers, Sway, that kind of thing. You don't have all the answers. And so I think that's what also Professor Yontz is saying here in terms of a nation that wants to proffer itself as having all the answers. But truthfully, we're still babes, right? Trying to learn our way through this, especially this new thing called COVID-19.
Yeah, humility goes a long way. And this idea that some would call this kind of American exceptionalism, that we are, this ethos that you describe, humility goes a long way to correcting that and to understanding that we've got a lot to learn and a heck of a lot farther to go as a nation.
So speaking of learning, how has unmasking benefited your education growth and your growth just in general as a person?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I think I told you all last week, I grew up in parochial schools. And so for me, I always thought that I had a leg up, right? Because in the 80s, right, you just assumed that parochial schools are better than public schools, right? That's just how we just assumed. And what ended up happening was, yes, I knew a lot of the book stuff. I read probably more than some of my neighbors read. But then there were sort of processes of life, right? Where not to go at night, right? How to understand, how to keep your eyes open around you, how to make friends and discern when people are being fake and fraudulent and things like that. And so the reality is that knowledge is not just, as Professor Yontz was saying last week, knowledge isn't just the process of information as it pertains to what's in a book. It's also about the ways in which we explore the world around us, the way we navigate through the various turns and twists and hurdles in life. And for me, the unmasking was easy because I had to literally live in two worlds, a world of a private, predominantly white world from kindergarten to 11th grade. And then I had to, during the day, and then I had to get bused back home into a 95% black neighborhood where all the people were going to public school, playing ball, cussing, smoking, drinking, all that stuff at various age, and trying to figure out which way do I go? How do I go? And that made me uncomfortable, and that uncomfortability allowed me to grow in my life.
Yeah, and I, obviously, being a person that studies educational policy, I think a lot about what Dr. Bailey's talking about, the difference of schooling in our nation. And public schools in our nation are one of these very interesting public institutions that are not all created equal. If you think about a lot of other public institutions in our society, you're thinking about a courtroom or an interstate or a post office. Well, a post office is a post office, no matter where you go. Or an interstate is an interstate or an interstate, no matter if you're driving north to south or east to west. But public schools in our nation are not equitable, and that's a very interesting, institution for the public where, you go to school in one neighborhood and it looks radically different than the same public institution 5 blocks away. And so we talk a lot about in my class right now where schools are not a meritocracy, where you're truly rewarded on your merits, but the way you become schooled and educated is so much more predictive of the family you're born into, the neighborhood you grow up to, or the access to a public institution, within your neighborhood. And so I think for me personally, throughout my life of studying the institution of schools, the understanding that, when I have 25 students in my classroom, their background of schooling was not equal, and, they spent 13 years in a very different type of institution from each other, where a lot of other public institutions in life or in this country, are not that radically different. But schooling in our country certainly is.
So, Dr. Bailey, you mentioned something about trust and, false knowing whether, this question builds nicely off of a statement that you made, but how do you deduce that someone is actually a part of your team? That these people aren't just falsely guiding or leading you?
Yeah, I mean, so the reality of that question is that there is no sort of 3 steps to that, right? I mean, people are deceptive, right? I don't mean to be existential here for you, but I mean, people are deceptive, right? People have agendas, right? And sometimes the agenda is for you, and sometimes the agenda is for them. And so one of the first things I will have that I generally teach even my daughters is I say, listen, understand, get what you can out of situations, but don't invest too much emotional effort until the time has been proven, right? That is the same. And even with a professor, right? I mean, you know, at a certain level, I had to learn the hard way, right? For a while, remember, I started teaching very young. And so I got my PhD at 26, but I was also in the classroom as an undergrad, in a classroom, and a graduate student teaching. And I used to always think like students were my friends, you know what I'm saying? And I'd always be cool with them, friends with them, because for 15, 16 weeks, we're just all kicking it, laughing, you emailing me, you calling me, you texting me. And then the next semester, like, y'all don't see me no more. Y'all don't talk to me no more. Y'all don't come by the way you used to come by and things like that. And for a while, my feelings got hurt, right? I thought we were a team. I thought Dr. Bailey or John or Sam or whatever were together. Then I realized, wait a minute. As I say, some people are just here for our lives temporarily, to sort of learn what we can learn from them in that moment. And some people last forever. You're going to find out real quickly that those who are your best friends just last year, right? Senior year, junior year, slowly they're going to wane, right? So if you had a big network, small network or whatever, they're going to start waning. And then you're going to grow some more friends in college, and then they might be big, and then they're going to wane each year, right? And so the reality is that's how life is. People, we're growing, we're maturing, and in this process, we just have to get whatever we can get like sponges, right? Get whatever we can get from anybody that's around us. And then if they leave us, we thank you for your time. God bless you, good night. But I'm not gonna sit up here and cry rivers over the fact that you decide to move on. Your team will be with you. Your team will stick it out with you. Those who are just there for a minute to be a part of your team and roll out, hey, don't get mad. Take what you can take, learn what you can learn, let folk leave, right? So I think that's probably the best way to look at it. There's no easy way to answer it. There's no, if there was a way that I can be honest with you, I would probably say in my existential self that more people in your life would disappoint you than would make you happy, right? But that's not to mean that you can't learn from them people and you can't grow from all your experiences. And so your team is going to be a tight team. But in the process, you may have to weed some folk out. But every experience has to be a learning.
All right, Dr. Bailey, I'm going to push back a little bit.
Okay.
As a existentialist philosopher, I need you to be practical here for a minute with me, okay? What practical advice would you give to these undergrad students as they're building that team here at Wittenberg? Like, what's the outcome 4 years from now? What's the profile of their team? Should it be 1 or 2 peers, 1 faculty member, a coach? What should be their profile of this team that they're building here, knowing that that's going to change and wane over time?
Right.
But is there a way to set roots here? Is there a way to set a foundation?
I think it starts with what are your interests, right? And so if I want to be an educator, I need some educators on my team, right? Don't go to, anyway, go to some educators, right? If you want to be a philosopher, hang out with some philosophers. If you want to be a mathematician, hang out with some mathematicians, right? The people who do the very thing that you want to do and do it with any type of skill and craft are the people you want to at least spend time with. Certainly as it relates to peers, right? I always say, I used to joke with students all the time. I was like, listen, if you failing math, right? And everybody you hang around failing math, right? You need new friends. You know what I'm saying? You need to hang out with the math folk, and at least for that semester, right? And so the reality is that, it's almost like, Snow White and the dwarves, right? you can't be the master of your kingdom, right? And everybody around you is dopey and mopey and sleazy and them, right? You got to have other queens and kings in your area. And so you need to find people who are also kings and queens. If you're the most fairest of them all, and everybody else look like ugly ducklings, intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, or whatever, then you need to upgrade, right? Level up, as they say, right? And so your team has to be a higher level. Your team of people who have done what you've done and willing to invest in how you get there, who have made mistakes, right? Also are vulnerable, and help you to navigate the mistakes that you are likely to make. You need to have those friends who you can come up with. Y'all create a pact freshman year, sophomore year. We're going to graduate together. We're going to stomp the seal together. We're going to start a business together. And every week, every semester, you all do things toward that. That to me is what team is, right? And in the process, you're both, or you're three teams, you're all learning things in life, and all that is building what that team is, right? So I think that would be how I respond in a very practical way to find the necessary people to do that.
So with the challenges of COVID and, having to stay inside and, there are these challenges presented in regard to collaboration. So how do you propose that we work on teamwork under the current circumstances?
Well, that's a heavy question. It's heavy in the sense of, as we're talking about how important this social dynamic of learning is, how important this building this team is. It's heavy in that a lot of us are struggling right now with that feeling of being isolated and not having that collaboration. And I don't have the answers. I'll be extremely vulnerable here. I just don't know. As I'm working with you remotely through teaching and things like that, I'm doing my very, very best, but it's not the same. I'm committed to meeting your needs, but I know I'm not. And so I think that whoever asks that question, keep asking it, because the way you ask questions, or the more times you ask the question, the more it gets us thinking, and it gets us talking, and it gets us kind of having a conversation. So don't let that question slide. And I fully understand I'm skirting the issue because I don't know. But I think these types of dialogues, virtually, and Dr. Bailey's been doing this since July the 5th or 3rd or whenever you started your podcast. I think that engaging those types of modalities for staying sharp intellectually and collaboratively would be my best advice now, but I just don't know.
And what a little bit more narrow, what about the bonds that you're building with people? Any recommendations in regard to that?
In terms of COVID and the bonds?
Yeah, I mean, just in regard to not being able to, campus involvement, the activities don't look like normal. Any recommendations first?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably just say, understand these are different times, right? And so the stories that your big brother told you about Wittenberg in this very moment is not going to be the same, right? The stories that your mom told you about Wittenberg is not going to be the same. But, right? The thing is, we try to put on the bright side, right? Is that once we come out of this moment, you're going to be stronger than a lot of us have ever been. When you come out of this March of 2020 to whenever this thing is over, the lessons you've learned, the sort of stick-to-itiveness and the discipline and even the hurt and depression that you've been able to push through is going to be more than most of us in our lifetimes. We've never experienced something like this. So as you think about how to make it through, understand, I don't want to be religious, but understand this too will pass, right? And as it passes, each day you're becoming better and stronger. Each day you're realizing, look, I can do this by myself. I don't want to do it by myself. I'd rather not do it by myself, but I can. And the more you realize that I can, then that all those histories, maybe in your classrooms, in your neighborhoods, all those histories of the I can't or I am not eligible to, all of that is gonna be put aside because you've proven to yourself during this COVID-19 experience that I haven't been debilitated, I've been hurt, but I have not been scarred to a point I can't move, and yet the books are coming and I'm reading slower, maybe, not as engaged with the ultimate, thoughts of everybody else, but I'm doing it. And so this is a tough period, but you are tough people. And you are tough people who are literally experiencing something your mama, your daddy, your cousin, your big brother, your uncle, your granddad never experienced. And for you and for your future is going to be a lot better than some of us in terms of how do we deal with calamitous times and situations.
So what are some of your favorite resources on campus that might be good recommendations for students to utilize during this time, but during normal times too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I'll go first. Mine is easy. He has a lot of them, probably deep ones. Mine is the bed, right? I utilize the bed. I rest my mind. I rest my ideas. I rest my head because the weight of the world sometimes feel on me, right? And so to me, if I could just turn the TV off, turn the YouTube off, turn all that and just relax and allow my mind to rest, that's cool. And as Professor Yontz mentioned, find one outlet, whether that's you shooting hoops, whether that's you doing push-ups. For me, it was creating a podcast, right? Find that outlet. And that outlet would allow, for me, it allowed connection, it allowed intellectual or sort of a cerebral exercise, and it kept me sharp while at the same time, I was able to go back to bed, right? So that's what I did during COVID.
Well, that sounds great to me. But I would also, again, I think that teachers by nature, and here I'm talking about your faculty members and your professors, like individuals. Again, we're not all extroverts, but we've selected this profession of teaching because we like individuals, and so I think that is a resource that even though we may not be together, connect with. I know my colleagues right now are, lining up Zoom meetings one-on-one to check in with you. I think we've got a incredible support team on campus with campus pastors, our counseling center, the folks over at Compass are excellent resources for those connections, that opportunity to have conversation with other human beings. So it's certainly, suggest that. And get outside. The days are numbering when this weather's going to turn to not be so great, and so who knows where we'll be November 15th. But get outside before those that bad weather sets in.
All right, thank you. So talk to us a little bit about your favorite topics to teach in your courses.
So I kind of alluded to mine a little bit earlier, but I like talking about the discrepancy of the schooling institutions that we have in this nation. And I think that those of you that have taken my foundations course before, I know that most of you or many of you take the course and decide that teaching's not for you. And for that, I'm happy. I'm happy to walk you across campus and introduce you to Dr. Bailey and join his team. But I think that, gaining an understanding of the way schooling and education intersects with us politically, with you as a taxpayer, with you as a potential parent, with you as a voter, is probably my favorite topic to teach, in the sense of, as you walk out of here, whether you never set foot in another school building itself, the role that public education plays in, the progress of society.
And for me, if I'm thinking of subjects, right, I can't think of subjects, thinking of classes, I think in topic, I think it's love, right? It's just love. And for me, my two favorite courses to teach is Intro to Philosophy and an upper level course that I team teach with Professor Rick Incrovati called Love, Death, Desire. He calls his class Flames of Desire. But I think love, right, for me, is just the various ways throughout history, love has been expressed, right? And the various ways that we have in our current context and the challenges that we have in our current context to love, right? And so for me, how do I treat other people? How do I treat myself, first of all, right? How do I, can I love myself enough to be vulnerable, to unmask? Can I love myself enough to sort of to learn more and to be better as a character with my ethics? Can I learn more? Can I love myself enough to be a better friend, to be a better son, to prepare to be a father or a mother? That's love. And then love, how can I expand the way in which I treat myself to the way I treat each other? And then I think for me, ultimately, it's about what service you render to this world. And so my favorite topic that I teach in most of the classes, somehow it revolves around love and how we love, the impediments of love, and then how wide or how broad our love should extend.
Thank you. So is the idea of being highly educated a cross-cultural principle? Do all cultures and people have the same ideals involved with being highly educated?
I mean, sure. I mean, we use different language for that, and we use different customs and traditions, and throughout history, those institutions that have been designated as kind of key educative institutions have changed. But culturally, the goal is to progress and to do better and to look differently, or kind of sustain life within that culture in a way that gives people this aesthetic feeling of joy and compassion for others. And so again, I think that it does cross cultures. I think it's, again, looks differently, and we use different words for this idea, and it's done in different institutions. But historically, it's been since the passing down of ideas and customs, with hopefully it's refined. And again, I think there have been times throughout particularly our nation where we've taken steps back and where we have not taken that opportunity to refine the dross and to become more polished. But I do think that it is an idea that is congruent to many different cultures.
No, that's powerful. I have nothing really to add there, except what I would just say. It's not even an add; it's just an amen. Like, there's a sense to which that the world is always seeking progress, right? And even in those spaces in which progress seems to be linked or tied to something that might be uber capitalist or scientific or things like that, what is constant, though, you see, whether it's in autocratic regimes or full-fledged democracies, what you see are individual peoples, individual families, individual communities attempting to be the best that they can be, right? And in the best of situations, the educative process is the process that allows not just how much math I can do, how fast. I mean, I remember when I was in grammar school, we used to have these, student versus the calculator competitions at the board, right? Who can solve the problem the fastest? And of course, I never used a calculator because I didn't need it, but I was a bright dude, right? But the thing is, I always wondered, like, how does this help me to be a better friend, right? How does this help me? I may know all this information, but how does this help me to advance my society? So I'm gonna be the best scientist, no problem. But we said the best scientist has to be able to engage with other people, have to be able to teach other people, have to be able to share with other people. And so this is why I appreciate what we do here at Wittenberg, because we want you to be the best chemist. We want you to be the best educator. We want you to be the best psychologist. But we also want you to understand how humanity operates. Understands that information that you're learning there is useful. It's going to be important. It is, we called last week, it is technique. It is a skill. But that skill disconnected, delinked, sort of deracinated from your ability to share with somebody, it limits our ability as a society to grow. And so the best of what we can do as highly educated people is to understand the ways in which our interconnectedness happens, both globally, but more so locally.
So you both talked about the importance of unmasking. What recommendations do you have about seeking the investment of others to helping someone unmasked?
Wow. I just jump real quick. The investment of others in helping me to unmask. I think like the story I gave you about stuttering last week. I think if I waited for people to accept the fact that it may take me 3 minutes to read a paragraph where it took you 35 seconds, if I waited for that person, if I waited for people to accept me as an overweight kid to do certain things that non-overweight kids did, then I might still be waiting at age 48 right now. I think the validation is not what we're seeking. We are putting the challenge of ourselves to be ourselves and be the best version of ourselves. And then that challenge then is placed upon others to either accept me in my unmasking or rotate, be gone, right? And so I think don't wait on others to validate you as you're trying to become a better person. You would hope you got people, like I said, we're gonna create that team, but everybody's not gonna be it. People are gonna laugh at you, people are gonna talk about you and that kind of thing. But those folk I think the line was, those that mind don't matter and those that matter don't mind, right? And so the reality is you just gotta be you, just do it. Understand that unmasking is for you, it ain't for them. And those who catch on, catch on. Now, everybody got to listen to me now. I don't care if I'm stuttering or not. What you going to do about it? Nothing. Shut up and listen, right? That kind of thing, right?
You know, one thing that took me a long time to learn, and I probably didn't learn it until I was in my 30s, is that idea of self-care. And, you know, I think that, you know, in our culture, many times as we're building that team or we're building this validation from others, we're just go all the time, and perhaps putting a fake face on, literally, to gain that acceptance, to build that team. And you know, our own self-care just dwindles. Mm-hmm. And I think that you know, if I could rewind time, it would be to go back into my college years and my 20s and my early 30s to suggest take time for yourself. Realize that it is not all about achievement and work and time away from your first loves or those things that you do to give you energy and to fill you up. And I think that as you're seeking that collaboration or that that acceptance from others, it's really easy to neglect self-care. And so whatever that might be, jump on it now and be laser focused on living a life and doing creating disciplines that kind of treat yourself pretty well. And for Dr. Bailey, I guess that's the bed.
When I can get to it.
So can you talk to us a little bit about how your travels in the United States or wherever internationally, and as well as your other work experiences, have changed or impacted the things you do today or the person you are today?
Yeah, I'll go first because I think I probably am not going to be able to top Dr. Bailey's background. I'm a Springfield native. I grew up about 5 blocks north of this campus. I remember going to football games and basketball games here at Wittenberg. As a little boy, I'd walk over with my mom and my dad to games. And so one of my biggest regrets, and I lived away, during college and graduate school and those types of things. But, I do think about that many times is, my lack of experiences elsewhere. And, and I do think about that a lot. But I also, there's some great benefits of working and, being in kind of a, certainly a public kind of facing discipline in your hometown. And, being able to, grow connections and make relationships through my kind of insider knowledge of Springfield. But I think that question is extremely important to become a kind of global citizen, or this idea of understanding the world outside of you. So while I have certainly can think of no other place I'd rather be than Springfield, Ohio, and Wittenberg University right now, I do wonder about that sometimes. And so I think that again, I kind of alluded to it last time, and anytime I get the chance to share a meal with Dr. Bailey and hear about his stories from Chicago area or Northern Indiana or Champaign or Boston or England, I jump on that, because I kind of, I only have the chance to live vicariously through individuals like that.
Now, that's interesting, because, it's interesting how my life has kind of turned now. But, when I was 19, 20 years old, I took advantage of study abroad, right? I took advantage. I went to my study abroad office and said, listen, I've been doing this internship at the Congress in DC, and I met this guy from London. And quite frankly, if I tell you the story, I met his assistant, who was beautiful, and I wanted to follow her to London, but that's just a whole different story. But the truth is, she worked for a member of parliament, and I just wanted to go to London. And I asked my school, can I get to London? And they said, sure, you can get to London. And when I tell you that I went to London at the time in which the Gulf War began, in 1990, late 90, I lived in an area of London called Kensington. And in Kensington, I was literally across the street from the Kuwaiti embassy and around the corner from the Iraqi embassy. And so every morning was chaos, protests, chaos, fights. And I went to the House of Commons, where they were having a world conversation around, do we go to war against Saddam Hussein? What do we do? And I'm listening to all this at age 19, 20 years old, like, whoa, this is too much, right? And all these international folk arguing. And I realized right then, I wouldn't have got this from the south side of Chicago. I wouldn't even have got this conversation in DC, because they were kind of locked into a sort of a one track mind. And so my ability to take advantage of our study abroad, realizing that the world is bigger than us. So a lot of the challenges that we have in our neighborhoods exist in neighborhoods all across the world. And sometimes they're even bigger and more complicated than the ones we have here. Remember, we're a young country. We some kids in this game of the world, right? So it's some people have been doing this for centuries before us. And so how traveling becomes important, however you do it. I was not rich at all. I was broke. I'm still broke. But I took out loans. I begged people. I did extra work, because I knew that getting exposed to various things, having these links to individuals who are doing similar things, policy, and caring for the poor people, and caring for people who are on the underside of government and things like that. I wanted to be around all those people wherever they were. And that's the network that I built internationally, that came from first making that walk from my dormitory to that office that said international studies. And I wanted to take a trip, because I knew that I couldn't live life just in these 50 states. I had to know the world around me.
Thank you. So we have time for about one or two more questions.
Okay.
So talk to us a little bit about, like, in light of COVID and online learning, but also we see all these YouTubers who make millions, right? So how do we stay motivated to continue learning and remain in college?
I think that's I think it would be irresponsible for somebody that has limited resources, like most of us. I think it would be irresponsible to not ask that question: is college worth it right now? And as one of your professors, I would encourage you to ask that, unless you've got unlimited time, unlimited money, because you're sacrificing a lot of money and a lot of time for college. You know, no matter where you go, whether you're here or whether you're at, you know, any other institution, I think it's irresponsible not to ask that question. Now, I think that, you know, what you can see from our culture is that we value very much this college experience. And when I say we, I kind of use that term collectively to not only include those folks in industry, those folks that are going to sit around the Thanksgiving table and ask you, you know, what you're doing after high school, you know, those that are in graduate school. This, you know, 4-year undergraduate experience is still valued very, very much, you know, in our culture. But I think it's irresponsible not to ask the question because of the amount of money and because of the amount of time you're spending. But I would say that as somebody that goes in front of students multiple times a week, I always, almost always, have that in the back of my mind that you could be asking that question. And I think that, you know, there are dozens of faculty at Wittenberg that understand that and that are doing their very, very best when they're in front of you, knowing what it is that you are sacrificing, both from time and money, and to understand that 3 years from now, 4 years from now, whenever you leave us, okay, that we have prepared you in a way that is going to allow you to live your best life during the rest of your days.
Devin, do you have a final question? Or was that it?
Do you want to respond to that one?
I will, but I would like to
go
ask
ahead.
one more
Go
question.
ahead. That can be our last.
Okay,
That's
so
fine.
first of
It's
all,
a good question.
it's a huge question. So first of all, and not just the people in section, what is section 1 of your FYI?
8.
Section 8, 1, 8, 9, is all
8 is great.
So first of all, let's give Professor Yontz a clap, everybody, wherever you are, right? Clap it up right now in your bedrooms, in your classroom. And you know, he did a great job, and I'm proud to call him a colleague and share this opportunity with you. And so I thank you, Brian, for your insight and your sage wisdom and your collegiality toward me. You don't have to clap for me. You just realize that what I would want from you is to ask that mirror question. You're asking us, is it worth it? I think the question really is, am I worth it, right? I think the question is, as I see myself in this current state that I'm in, what else do I see myself doing other than being better, right? Now again, I know you can say, yeah, I can be on YouTube, like my daughter, right? She's on our Google Classroom right now at the house, and she'd rather be doing pictures on YouTube and dances on TikTok. But I asked her, are you sure this is gonna make you a better person? Now, but daddy, it might make me a millionaire, or it might make you broke watching other millionaires on the YouTube. Which one do you have a better chance at? Having a situation like her dad, which is, I don't want to be like her dad, but preparing yourself in the event of the next calamity, right? Preparing yourself to be the independent worker, to work for others, to hire people. And so I think the question is not, is Wittenberg worth it, or is college worth it? Is, am I worth it? Am I worth branching out and being the best that I can be and learning as much as I can learn in this short period of time where most of us, not all of us, because some of y'all got a lot going on, but most of us don't have the responsibilities that we would have in 5 years, in 15 years. And then to ask yourself, well, I'll go back at 25 or 30. Good luck, you might. But then the world, you might have children, you got bills. So why not right now invest in yourself? Invest in being the best that you can be. That also means invest in your work. I know I'm gonna cut this short in 30 seconds. It means taking the time to get the best out of this experience, even the COVID experience. Realizing that the answer is not just to kick it some more because I don't have to go to class. It's what else can I learn about these subjects while I'm at the computer? How broad can I take? If you're on YouTube, watch a YouTube video about educational policy. Watch a YouTube video about philosophy, about history. If you're on YouTube, watch the video that you're watching, but also do some education. Invest in yourself. That's the best investment, right? Other than that, then, you know, what do we have, right? And the only thing we have is ourselves in this mirror. And ultimately, you have to say, what kind of man, woman do I want to be in my life? I thank you. I thank you all for being diligent in this hour, for being diligent last hour, last week, for enduring the two of us do what we do. Certainly, Professor Yontz is in Blair Hall. Go holler at him when you can. Email him, tell him you got some more questions or you want to reach out. And obviously with me, don't email me. Just, you know, just say hi, send me see me on the street. I got too much going on. But
You'll find it pretty easily if you Google him.
just Google.
Yeah.
I'm Googleable, right?
Yeah, he's
Google me. Google.
Some of us aren't.
I'm highly Googleable, so Google me, right? But God bless y'all, man. Have a great day. Read today, learn something different that you didn't know yesterday, and invest in yourself. All right, FYI, you know the crew that I'm talking about. Y'all the best, right?
All right, thank you both so much. This has been wonderful. We appreciate your knowledge and imparting that upon us. And so thank you. And if, like Dr. Bailey said, if you have more questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to Dr. Yontz.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you. Have a great day, and my FYS. Kudos to you. And happy birthday, Ben Rodell.
Oh,
Nice.
you
Nice
won
shout
that.
out.
Nice,
Nice shout
nice.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tiger up.